SABC News celebrates Youth Month.
Watching SA Today live here on the SABC News channel. A very good afternoon to each and every one of you, and welcome to 3 hours of the day's top news, business, and yes, all the sporting headlines, both locally, continentally, and abroad. I'm Alicia Ntlantla-Jal. Hello, you.
Good afternoon, Alicia, and good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for tuning in to the SABC News channel, independent and impartial. These are our top stories this hour.
South Africa's Independent Electoral Commission allays any fears of a possible cyber attack ahead of the 2019 general polls.
More than 100 long-distance truck drivers have disrupted traffic along the N4 highway between Hoedspruit and Komatipoort in Mpumalanga as part of a strike.
And Supersport expected to pronounce the future of their rugby analyst panel following the walkout by Panelist and former Springboks player Willemse during a live broadcast back in May.
Well, Supersport is about to brief the media on the Willemse saga. Let's take you there now live.
All right, it seems okay. That it's not ready.
Yeah, we'll cross there as soon as we can. They're not ready yet. They were scheduled to start at 3 o'clock, but you know how these things go. But anyway, let's carry on. The increasing financial constraints and nationwide violent protests are posing a high risk for a free and fair election.
The Independent Electoral Commission told legislators in Parliament that although it is ready for next year's election, several internal and external factors are likely to affect the electoral process.
All right, okay. We can now cross to that Supersport briefing that's taking place. Let's go there now live.
Press briefing. The review process by Advocate Mallett SC was very extensive and included taking the following steps. Step number 1, reviewing the audio visuals of the live studio broadcast, including footage which was not broadcast on the day and of prior broadcasts involving the 3 presenters. Step 2, conducting separate interviews with role players, including Botha, Mallett, the anchor on the day, Motsidisi Mohono, the head of productions for Supersport, the executive producer for rugby, the production manager of the broadcast, Mandla Nzibande, and the CEOs of MultiChoice and Supersport. Thirdly, conducting on-site inspections, which included visiting the studio and viewing a live broadcast in an outside broadcast van during the recent test match between South Africa and England at Ellis Park. He also interviewed and consulted with Professor Adam Habib, an expert with extensive experience in race relations, and considered literature on subtleties of racism conduct. Willemse regrettably decided not to participate in the review, even though all parties involved were advised of the process before it started and raised no objections at the time. Advocate Malika found the following. Firstly, the conduct of Nas and Nick during the off-air conversation with Ashwin and during the live studio broadcast of the post-match commentary of the match does not manifest naked racism and was not motivated by racist considerations. Secondly, assisted by Professor Habib, he also found that there was also no evidence of Nas or Nick exhibiting either intended or unintended subtle racism. The incident cannot be explained on the basis of the suggestion or suspicion that Ashwin was, for the most part, not present in the studio when the second half of the rugby match was televised. Fourthly, there are two factors which provide a reasonable explanation for the incident. The first is the mistaken technical assumption that there was enough time for all the analysts to express their pre-match analysis or commentary of the Lions versus Brumbies rugby match. However, the switch to the live broadcast happened sooner than anticipated, and consequently, there was no time for Ashwin to express his views. The panel then agreed, off-air, that Ashwin would be given the first opportunity to speak after the game. The second is that it is reasonable to assume that Ashwin may have regarded the common stance adopted by Nick and Nas as patronizing when they insisted that he should thereafter speak first. Those were his main findings, and I would suggest that you read the complete report to have the full context of this process. Advocate Maleka SC also made a number of recommendations, all of which will be implemented by Supersport. These are that a forum will be established for the team of analysts to provide their views on the performance of the analysts and possible room for improvement during that specific broadcast after each studio broadcast. Secondly, a code of conduct will be formulated for analysts, including grievance procedures and credible mechanisms to resolve any grievances they may have. Thirdly, analysts will be required to operate the touchscreen in the studio across the color line, even though the touchscreen is the more complex of the functions on set. Fourthly, counseling will be offered to Mutsidisi, Nas, Nick, and Ashwin due to the emotional suffering all have endured from and since the incident. And then lastly, Supersport will take the additional step of referring Advocate Maleka's report to the South African Human Rights Commission. Given Advocate Maleka's findings, we expect that Nas and Nick will resume studio duties in the future. We will discuss the timing of this with the presenters and our production department. While we are disappointed that Ashwin did not participate in Advocate Maleka's review, we respect his right not to do so. And in the spirit of reconciliation, I will make another attempt to reach out to Ashwin for us to find a mutually acceptable way forward so that he knows that this issue has been fairly investigated. Notwithstanding what has happened, one cannot forget that Ashwin reached the peak of international sport while facing very difficult circumstances, and he continues to inspire many young people in our country. He represents the aspirations of many, and I sincerely hope that Ashwin will respond positively. Thank you so much. I will now hand back to Carol to facilitate the questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khobane. All right, here's an opportunity now for any questions that you might have. We've got roving microphones. We'll take them in batches of 3. Before you ask your question, please can you identify yourself? Just introduce yourself. We'll start right up front here.
Hi, Gaupalelo Palaitile from Jacaranda FM. I'm just interested to find out what Mr. Willemse's reasons was for not participating, if you can share that.
Thank you so much. Let's have our second question.
Pilar Sande from 702 and EWN Sport. My question is Mr. Willemse going to repeat what's happening with Mr. Willemse? Is he also going to resume in-studio analysis together with Mr. Mallett and Mr. Botha? Thanks.
Thank you. And our third question was up front here. Yep.
Well, let me go. Jacques from the Star newspaper. How clear is that whole process of the report and the investigation that you guys have done, even though you haven't had Mr. Willemse's input? It would seem that he was the key figure in this whole matter, yet he hasn't had any input in the findings or the investigation.
All right, thank you so much. So Mr. Khobane will answer the questions, and where necessary, we'll have Mr. Mawela also adding in. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start with the second question first on what's happening to Mr. Ashwin Willemse, considering that Nas, Botha and Nick Mallett will come back on air. It is my intention to reach out to Ashwin and his counsel for us to have further engagements on how we can both take the process forward. As I said in my introduction, in my speech, that I still see a place for Ashwin at Supersport. And I very much would like to engage further with him to understand his viewpoint, because he decided not to participate in the process. But however, it's important for us to not close the door on Ashwin, because we still believe that he's got a lot of value to add. The next question I'll ask is that how clear is the report, even though Ashwin did not participate? You will read in the report that Advocate Maleka himself concedes that the report is a little poor because Ashwin didn't participate. However, we believe that the report is very thorough, based on the fact that he interviewed all the role players who were present in studio on that day, the producer on the day, the director on the day. He also went as far as approaching Professor Adam Habib to try and learn more about subtle forms of racism. We gave our input to the engagement as well, because we had meetings with Ashwin, quite a few meetings in fact, in the week after the incident. We think the report details the findings based on the evidence that was presented before Advocate Maleka SC.
Thanks, Gideon. Just on the issue of the reasons for not participating, the report also goes to explain the reasons that Mr. Ashwin Willemse has advanced in terms of not participating. But what comes out very clear is that he says he could not participate because he's unsure that that forum is the right forum for evaluating the issues that he wanted to ventilate. So in the main, it was based on that the forum, he does not believe that it's the right forum for him to participate in.
Furthermore, as I mentioned, we will be referring the report to the SA Human Rights Commission for their viewpoint as well.
Okay, right at the back. Next question.
David Isaacson, TISA Blackstar. How much has this whole process cost Supersport? Getting the advocate to do this whole review.
Next question. Yeah, front.
I think you would agree that Mr. Willemse's reaction in the studio considered that it started quite a big racial debate in our country. Would you now, with this investigation concluded, say that his actions were unfair or unfair towards Mr. Botha and Nick Mallett?
Can you just introduce yourself as well, please, sir?
Kobus Klaasen, Netwerk 24.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken, and just behind you.
Sorry.
Shlonim Timkul from ENCA. The first question is just immediately after that, in that media briefing that you guys had, when asked if there were racial undertones to it, you were convinced, both of you, that there were no racial undertones to it. So is there something that's changed since then, given just how this was started, this was started now? And also just on that, how sure are we that, obviously we don't have Ashwin Willemse's points of view and we don't know from him what happened, but how sure are you that it wasn't, there wasn't a racial aspect to it?
The first question is the money question. For us, it wasn't important how much it cost. We believe that we needed to do a fair, independent, and thorough investigation because of the allegations that were put before us. So I haven't personally looked at how much it costs. I just knew that it needed to be done.
So on the issue of how we now conclude that his actions were unfair to both Nick and Nes, I think what we need to take cognizance of, and the report goes into more details around that specific, around issues of racism. And I think it might be proper for me to read some of the paragraphs that, just to show the complexity of the issue that we are dealing with, and whether we want to go to an extent of determining unfairness or no unfairness, because the report doesn't go to that extent. But if you read paragraph 42 on the report, it says the following. It says, scholars on the phenomenon of racism acknowledge that it is a complex and enduring social phenomenon. It is broadly defined as a phenomenon that maintains or exacerbates avoidable and unfair inequalities in power, resources, or opportunities across racial, ethnic, cultural, or religious groups in society. It goes on further to say in paragraph 43 that racism manifests itself at institutional, interpersonal, and individual levels. At a personal level, racism can be expressed through beliefs such as negative or inaccurate stereotypes, or through emotion such as fear or hatred, or through behavior or practice such as unfair treatment, or through unconscious bias. Scholars also acknowledge that the old form of racism, manifested through naked or overt conduct, has now been replaced with new forms of racism, variously called everyday racism, subtle racism, or contemporary racism. So if you start digging deeper into the report and begin to appreciate the complexity of the issues that we are dealing with, I think from where we are sitting, we are saying the Ashwin responded based on something that he saw on that particular day in time, and responded in the way that he has responded. But understanding the complexities and the history and our cultural complexities as a country, we feel that going to the extent of trying to say, was it unfair for him to walk out based on the utterances of Nick and Nes, or fair based on the utterances and what he felt at that particular point in time, or what he says it was at that particular point in time, it's taking it a little bit further. So we are trying to take the approach that we have to be conciliatory in our approach, or taking into cognizance the complexities of the issues that we are dealing with. So that is the approach that we have taken in terms of trying to address this issue going forward. That's why Gideon has rightly said that he will engage with Ashwin and try to find a way forward. In terms of the last question that we have raised around, the question that has been raised around the media briefing, has anything changed? We now have a report in front of us, which in our view is very extensive, it's very thorough, it went into all areas of the issues, that, except of course considering that that Mr. Willemse did not participate in it. This report, we accept it as it is, and hence we are making it available to everybody to make sure that everybody can go through it in detail and see how Advocate Maleka SC has come to the conclusion that he's making in this report, and will be implementing that. So the change is that there is a report based on an investigation, and we'll implement those findings of the report.
More questions? Oh, yeah.
So just for the clarity, is it now that you realize that there was a racial aspect to the whole thing? I just want clarity on that. And also, what did Nick Mallett and Botha have to say? What was their reaction to the outburst? Because we haven't heard from them either.
Okay.
Next question? Yeah.
Will Nick and Nas resume in-studio stuff this coming Saturday?
Third question.
My name is Pesingato from SABC News. I just want to find out if Advocate Maleka's report was only based on the findings the occurrences of that day, or it looked back from when the time they started working together. And I hear that you have concluded, or the report rather says, there were no racism aspects to the whole thing. How would advocate have concluded that without the contribution of Ashwin Willemse? And you still maintain that you've left the door open and still want to engage with Ashwin, but still you say the report is conclusive that there was no racism aspect to the whole thing. How did you guys get to that point? Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Advocate Maleka conducted interviews with all role players, Botha, Nick Mallett, Motsidisi Mohono, the head of production, all of us. He also reviewed audio visuals of the live studio broadcast on the day, and he reviewed broadcasts of prior broadcasts, involving the three presenters. So he didn't only look at what happened on that incident, he also looked at prior broadcasts of any incident which may have taken place. So that's as thorough as he went. The report does say that the findings are poor on the fact only that Ashwin didn't participate. However, he attempted to be as thorough as possible. He interviewed all the role players. He looked into all manner of literature into racism, which Calvo has read. He also spoke to an eminent scholar of race and race relations in South Africa, in Adam Habib. So I think the report details findings based on the evidence that was before him. And the reason that I'm still looking to engage with Ashwin in some form or another is to try to understand from his point of view what took place. However, we have to take the findings of the report seriously and implement the recommendations, which is why we've said that Mr. Nick Mallett and Botha will come back. The next question was, will they be available this weekend? No, they won't be. We've already concluded the schedules of all the talent that will be in the Cape Town Test match. Tomorrow we will engage with them, or when they are next available, to work again.
Just on the last question, how did you get to the conclusion that there was no racism despite Ashwin Willemse having not participated? I think, not repeating the same thing, but we should appreciate the complexity of the issues that we are dealing with. And secondly, we should also take note that Mr. Willemse elected not to participate in this investigation. We have gone out of our way to appoint an independent somebody to look at this matter, and the person that we have appointed, I think in the room we can all agree he's reputable, credibility, everything is above board, and we have no reason to doubt his finding based on the information that was shared with him on that particular day in time, on the whole investigation that took place. So all we can do is that if a person elects not to participate in an inquiry, and the inquiry goes ahead and the findings come out, we have to accept the findings, because this is an independent somebody that we took the issues to, and he has come up with findings, and those findings, we said we accept them fully as they are. We are not going to cherry pick what suits us and what does not suit us as a responsible company. This is what we are displaying today, that we are taking all the recommendations and we are going to implement them to the latter of what the submission has made. So that is where we are. We could not do anything further. The reason, of course, the referral of the report to the South African Human Rights Commission, we also don't know what Mr. Willemse's attitude towards the South African Human Rights Commission will be, and whether the South African Human Rights Commission will want to do any further work on it, and we'll wait to hear from the South African Human Rights Commission as to what they think the next steps are. So it's a complex matter. We did what we as a corporate felt was the best thing to do under the circumstances, and that's where we are.
We'll take okay. Wait, right here at the first.
Gentlemen, can we assume that Willemse doesn't have a contract with Supersport anymore, or what is his employment status with Supersport now?
Okay. Right up front here. Okay.
Ivan from News 24. Mr. Gideon, can I just get clarity on this? Are you accepting that the report is poor because Ashwin didn't participate in the report?
I have a third one right up front.
John Walland, Hot 91.9. Mr. Kobani, I just wanted to find out if any form of remorse has been shown by either of the three presenters in this regard.
Ashwin has a contract with Supersport. It hasn't been terminated, and neither has he terminated it. Based on our next engagement with him, I think that will determine where we go. I think everybody in this room understands what my stance is and what I'd like to see happen. So, no, his contract is still standing. He's still binding. You asked a question regarding the poorness of the report. I don't think the report in itself is poor. I think that because Ashwin didn't participate, the report does not have a comprehensive view of everyone who was involved in the incident because Ashwin didn't participate. I think that's clear. However, Advocate Maleka worked on the evidence that was before him and other external parties that he consulted with. And in terms of remorse, I think everybody was very remorseful, even Ashwin, because they all felt that the incident has put the Supersport brand under disrepute. Everybody understands the effect this has had in further polarizing South Africa. Our subscribers are not happy with what transpired. Some people were distraught, and quite a few people wrote to me personally to say they're not happy with what happened because they watched the match with their kids. And for those reasons, everybody was remorseful. And they apologized to say, look, for putting the company into disrepute, if we may have, we apologize and we'll participate in the process of finding an amicable way forward. That's what happened.
Okay, we'll take a final round of questions. Yep, right.
Charles Barre from Daily Sun and Sunday Sun. What sort of message will it send to Supersport and the sport should the discussion with Ashwin don't work out? And if he was not happy with the forum that you guys came up with, did he come up with a solution, that kind of forum that you would have liked to sort out the issue?
Okay, next question. Yes, sir.
Kanye Sochok from Tiso Black Star Group. Is there a time frame in terms of when you will be meeting with Ashwin to ensure that there will be a next step forward?
And we'll have our final question. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yes, sir.
Mr. Kubani, did Advocate Maleka at some stage during the period of compiling this report indicate to you that Ashwin Willemse does not want to state his case? And did you then, or anybody from Supersport, try to persuade him otherwise?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll start with the last question. Remember, the report was meant to come out at a certain date and then it got postponed. That was because Advocate Maleka or our attorneys rather, were engaging with Ashwin and his attorneys to find out whether he will participate in the process. He mentioned to us that he would give us a definite answer on a certain date. He requested an extension, and we granted it to him. In fact, I think he requested 2 extensions to make up his mind, and we granted both extensions. But that Advocate Maleka was clear then that we've postponed already, and we've given a deadline of the 18th of June to table the report. So therefore, and then Ashwin said that his attorneys rather sent us a letter to state that he will not participate in the inquiry. The time frame of the next steps, I mean, I can't really say because we need to approach Ashwin, and maybe he'll come with his attorneys. Then we will discuss what his state of mind is and what he thinks, what forum he thinks is appropriate He hasn't told us what forum he thinks is appropriate. And then the last question from the gentleman from Daily Sun was, what's the message if things with Ashwin don't work out? I can't preempt that. But we are very reconciliatory in our approach because, as Calvo has said, this is a very complex and sensitive matter. And we still personally want to understand from Ashwin how he feels, and also to hear, like you've asked, which forum does he believe is the right forum. But I think that we've done what we can as a business in appointing a reputable, independent person to conduct this review. And in addition, the next step in us referring the report to the SA Human Rights Commission, I think we've done what we can, really.
Yeah, I think there was just the last question on, did you provide any alternatives forum that the matter has to be ventilated? No. The submission that was made to Advocate Maleka did not indicate any forum that he will prefer the issues to be ventilated. So that is the short answer to that, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mawela, Mr. Khobane, for being here and for answering those questions. If you check your inboxes, ladies and gentlemen, that press release and the report has been sent to you. It's been emailed to you. It's also available on supersport.com. Mr. Mawela, Khobane, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're also going to be having flash drives that are available for the written media immediately. We've got our communications manager here with us. Clinton, if you could please stand. So that's a communications manager. You can approach him for any further queries. Thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate your time today. Travel safely, and we wish you a great rest of the day. Thank you.